Hey, good day everyone. Today we're going to talk about our cover page, and this is slightly different from a typical cover page, which we like to add actually a site plan to it. But because this project will have multiple site plans for fire department approval, we just have a standard cover page minus a site plan. So anyhow, we're going to try to recreate this page. Let me just kind of give you an overview. Obviously, you have your title block that you guys should already have created yourself. I have a couple of 3D views, so I'm going to show you guys how to save a few 3D views that you can set up. And then really in our office, the most important thing about the cover page are these kind of technical data. And this is what the city really zones in on. So I'd like you guys to understand it. A couple of this kind of basic things, but project directory is basically, who's working on this project. So who's the architect, who is the property owner. And then on the project data here, I left a few things kind of blank so that you guys can go and try to fish for those information. But the project data is really, the address of the project, APN. So APN is assessor's parcel number, and that is a tax ID. So every property gets taxed, and so this is the kind of unique address, if you will. This is the address that everybody delivers mail to, but the tax assessors are using this number to identify that particular piece of land. And legal description is, which lot number is it, which block is it in, which area is it in. It's really kind of how a cartographer or somebody who's a mapping division finds, that particular parcel. So you should be able to also kind of search around and try to get the legal description. You can go to the county website, county tax assessor's office, and then put in the address, and you should be able to find a lot of that information. The type of construction, of course, this is a house, so we're going to use the least restrictive type of construction, which is type 5, but we are sprinklering it and adding a couple of other kind of fire rated features, so it's going to be type 5-A. Occupancy group, what kind of building is this? Well, this is a house, a single family residence, so the occupancy group will be an SFR, single family residence. Zoning, I'd like you guys to fish for that. Of course, if you go to the county website, because this is a LA County project, and you search for this particular address, and if you fish through their zoning map that the county has, you should be able to find the zoning for that. So that will be one of your tasks, is to find the zoning for this particular address. We're also identifying that this is a 2-story building, and building height is super important for planning department because they usually have height restrictions on how high your building can be on a particular zone. So if you're in a commercial zone, the building could be maybe 40 feet tall, but usually in a residential zone, it's usually like 30 feet, sometimes 28 feet, 18 feet. So again, it varies from zoning to zoning. And also in this particular project, it's on a pretty severe hillside. So we gave an elevation for the front, and in the rear, it's taller because the building height for the planning department is measured from the ground, not from the finished floor. So, the nearest dirt, if you will. And then we're saying it's been sprinklered. We're going to have sprinklers in the house. Project scope is also very important. This is basically a narrative or a description of what we're proposing. So we're basically rebuilding 2581 square foot of single family residence, and it has a 4-bedroom and 3.5 bath. So that description is actually quite important because that's going to go into the building records and things like that. So, describing the project, and in a very short but a very specific way is really an essential skill. Building code here. Currently, in 2020, most cities have adopted a 2019 building code. Building code usually gets updated every 3 years, I believe. But anyhow, so this is the most recent building code. And so what we're basically saying legally is saying that our drawing will be, reflective of the 2019 California Building Code. It'll also, comply with 2019 California Residential Code. The difference between these two is that this is building code for generally all buildings, including commercial buildings. And then there's a specific code just for houses, which has slightly different variation, but we still have to comply with both. We're also going to have to comply with California Mechanical Code. That's with HVAC and, ventilation system. And then we're also complying with California Plumbing Code, California Electrical Code, and 2019 California Fire Code. So we have quite a bit of responsibility. We kind of have to understand all of these codes and make sure our building, complies with all of these things. We also have to comply with Cal Green, which is kind of like a recycling and energy resource code. And also another energy code. So this is more like recycling, water conservation, and things like that. And the energy code has to do with the amount of electricity we will use for heating and cooling the house, kind of in a sense. So really the energy code and the mechanical code, kind of goes, electrical code, they kind of like, overlap one another. Life safety code for national fire protection. So it's kind of like it's a supplementary of the California Fire Code. And then the accessibility, which is the American Accessibilities Act. So for houses, for private residents, it doesn't affect us a whole lot, but for apartments and things like that, this definitely comes into play. But we basically list all the codes that we have to be kind of conscious of in this particular project on the title page, and it is a requirement. And then here, so this, I'd like you guys to just copy and just type up yourself. I think it's just important that rather than me just giving you a Word document, that you guys actually read it, type it in, and then, and then you guys are done. And especially the general notes on the site plan. Again, I could easily provide you guys with a PDF or a Word, but I actually do want you to read them and then write it. And I like you guys to just kind of try to understand it. Like I'm going to pick a random one here. Number 5 shall be placed. I guess it's number 4. Discharge pollution to any storm drains prohibited. No solid waste, petroleum byproduct. Blah 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 blah. Basically, storm drains are the city. On the sidewalks, you see it, and then there's a little slot in the underneath the sidewalk that the water drains into. That's a storm drainage system, and all that stuff drains to the ocean, guys. So that's why sometimes you see these things, these little blue fish paint that says draining to the ocean, draining to the ocean. That's just to, there to remind people not to just throw stuff down there because it goes straight into the ocean, and obviously then it pollutes the ocean or pollutes the fish. So, they're basically saying, look, don't put any kind of oil products, any, construction waste down the drain, So these are really, basic general notes. So I'd like you guys to read them and go ahead and retype them into your cover sheet. The lot coverage table, this has to do with, what is touching the ground. It's not the actual square footage of your house. Because let's say, for instance, if your building's 4 or 5 stories, then you're going to have a lot of square footage, but only the bottom floor is touching the house. So lot coverage has to do with what you are taking over the dirt with, So if you have a deck, sometimes that's covering the dirt, then they want you to count it. And unfortunately it varies from city to city and area to area depending on the zoning. But in a nutshell, you just have to think about, if I'm covering some natural dirt with a structure, then that's technically lot coverage. Alright, so before we used to do the lot coverage percentage and what's max allowed, but not every zoning has a maximum allowed. They control it in a different way. So I don't think we need to show that. And the way how we created this is basically lines and text. It's not something that we try to extract from Revit automatically. I know we can put a floor in there and get the actual square footage and kind of put it out as a schedule, but we found that that was a little bit cumbersome when, especially if the numbers didn't match or we got some crazy decimal place, like for instance, if it was 1,607.35 square feet, I mean, it gets kind of crazy. So we found that is a lot more flexible and versatile if we just did this from scratch. So these are just regular text, and just regular detail lines that we just created this little chart. But you don't have to show this part, max allowed or max coverage. You definitely want to establish how large the lot is. And then I don't really like the way how we named it here. It should just really be first floor, X amount of square feet, because some of that is touching the dirt on the top, and on the bottom level, which is cantilevering over the hill, that's also touching the dirt. So you have the lower level at X amount of square feet and the garage at X amount of square feet. So these are all the things that are touching the dirt, and we're giving it a total area, and then this is a percentage of the lot size. So our lot coverage is actually pretty minimal. It's only at 15%. The floor area is your actual livable residential area, right? So this is only 2 floors and it's about the same. So it's 2,677 square feet of house, which is, let me double check. Oh yeah, so see, it's the numbers, something's not, oh yeah, no, it's correct. So we're saying the new house is 2,677. And so obviously those two numbers should match, 2,677. This symbol legend is actually a little bit of a pain to recreate. So I actually have a screenshot, like a image for you guys to download. So simply just download it and then paste it in. The vicinity map, you guys should be able to Google it and do a screenshot and bring it in, right? And then the only other thing to really discuss is really the sheet index. You guys should know how to do that, but I will definitely create a video that's supplementary to this lecture, creating a sheet index from scratch. Alright guys, so we will see you on the next video with how to create a sheet index.